Now, time to return to our archive interview with David Soul, who died last week at the age of 80. When he spoke to Brian Matthew on Radio 1 in 1976, his musical career was just taking off. He was most well known, of course, for his character of Hutch in the TV show Starsky and Hutch, which began in 1975. So here is Brian Matthew with David Soul.
David, let's talk, as we must, about Starsky and Hutch, and tell me how much of your life does this involve?
Well, right now it just about consumes it. Unfortunately, I have an awful lot of other interests, but right now it's an all-consuming thing. We shoot on a schedule of 7 days to make one of those shows, which means that we start on a Monday and finish on the following Tuesday, start the new show on Wednesday and finish the following Thursday, or whatever it is.
How far ahead are they scripted?
We started production in the 1st of June, thereabouts, about the 7th of June, I think, and finish up at the end of February, we'll have done 22 shows by then. They're done back-to-back. When you ask how far ahead they're scripted, we had 15 scripts to start with, but if you saw the scripts before they're shot and after they're shot, one bears very little resemblance to the other.
How do you mean they're done back-to-back?
In other words, we don't have a chance to, there's no breathing room in between.
I see, yeah.
We finish a show on Tuesday, we start the new show on Wednesday, which means while we're shooting the show that finishes on Tuesday, we're preparing for the show that starts on Wednesday. So you really never have a chance to get deeply into where the script could go, what the dimensions of the characters could be. And for an actor, it becomes very frustrating.
It must
in a
have.
sense.
Is any of it ad-libbed? I mean, I can't imagine how you learn dialogue. Yes.
Television is really the medium of the moment, and it has to be that way because there simply isn't the time to deal with a script in the kind of depth that one might in a motion picture. And gratefully, I guess Paul and I have a relationship that allows us to ad-lib a lot, and not just the dialogue so much, but we write most of the action ourselves. We write a lot of the little comedy moments of Starsky and Hutch. But let's look at Starsky and Hutch for what it is. It is in a very general genre a cop show. But it's also entertainment. It would be pretty boring if you were just dealing with what a policeman really does. I mean, 10% of the time perhaps he's out chasing around in a high-speed chase someplace, but he's mostly paperwork, and wouldn't you like to see an hour of paperwork? So it's Starsky and Hutch, what it does have is some style, which is the most important thing. And it gives a human quality, a humanness to a policeman. And that's why cops over there like it so much. I mean, the policemen...
They really do.
Oh, they love it. I had a cop who came on the set who had arrested me about 3 or 4 years ago for outstanding warrants, traffic warrants, and had thrown me in the can for overnight and the whole thing. And he had sent me sometime earlier in the mail, he had sent me a card on the back of which he had written, "If I'd known that you were in this show, I never would have arrested you." And he came on the set and wanted to introduce himself because he said the show meant so much to him and his buddies. So my point being that it may not be a realistic appraisal of police work in the United States, obviously, but because of the humanness and the humor and some of the things that we do, even the policemen didn't like the show a great deal.
And it has its advantages as far as you're concerned.
Oh,
obviously.
It certainly does.
Right. Okay. Now, you said the next song is...
Yeah, well, it's pretty obvious. I happen to like Simon and Garfunkel a great deal, and I think Paul Simon is a brilliant writer, and this is one of the songs that he wrote that I like, which I identify with where I came from, because where I came from in South Dakota, it's one of the few states in the United States where the population is actually going down, and nothing's left in my little town. What is it? Will you hear the lyric? Just listen to the lyric about it, okay?
In my little town,
My Little Town. That was Paul Simon's recording from his album Still Crazy After All These Years. You mentioned to us you've got this relationship with Paul Michael Glaser from Starsky and Hutch. That's a very warm and good one. Did it begin with this series, or had you known him before?
Well, I've known Paul about 8 years, but as the fortunes of actors go, we cross paths, and going where the work is. You can't always get to know somebody very well, so I really got to know him at the advent of the show.
Right. When did acting begin, and how did it begin for you?
For me, it began in about 12 years ago, I guess. I was in Minneapolis studying political science at the University of Minnesota and trying to earn a living as a folk singer. And I've always believed in following the moment. And somehow, if you're true to yourself in that, you don't make too many mistakes. So I flunked out. I flunked out of school. So I thought I'd follow the moment and leave. It was a good idea,
Yes.
especially since I flunked. But there was a theater group there that somebody had dropped out of, and I went to that theater group and became enchanted with Sergeant Musgrave's dance, which they were doing at the time, and took over the role of Pugnacious Collier. And from there, one thing led to another. I started doing some concert work. And then I wanted to get out. After I'd flunked out of school, I wanted to get out of the Midwest, take the music and run, so to speak, and decided to go to New York, and had a gimmick where I put a bag over my head and called myself the Covered Man. I did. It's crazy. It's a crazy story all by itself, and it would make a fascinating motion picture someday. Because I really wanted to be known for my songs. It was... And I felt that the tape that I had sent out east was so bad, that I had sent to New York, was so bad that nobody would want to buy me. So I figured that the best thing to do, as we talked about before, I can't ever think of this saying, what is the mother of invention? Necessity. Or there's another term I should use, but necessity is the mother of invention, and I knew that I had to come up with something. So I put this bag on my face, and I had an 8x10 picture taken of it, and sent that along with the tape, and 2 weeks later I got contracts back from William Morris Agency in all fields. Followed that out to New York with the intention of singing, and was signed immediately to do the Merv Griffin Show, which is a talk show over there, as a regular singer on his show.
With a bag on your head.
With a bag on my head. Yeah. But I never let anybody see what I looked like. I refused to take the mask off. The agents, the record company, which I eventually signed with, MGM Records, at the time, I never took the bag off for anybody. And that became the key to many things for me, and that is mystery and curiosity. You should always have a very strong place in any entertainer's repertoire, if you will. You know that you give so much, and you leave an area that people don't know about, or you give so they want more. And that's really what I learned with that bag. Finally, I took a cross-country tour with a record and came back to New York and opened at a club in the Village called the Cafe Go-Go. And I was a bomb, because you can't hold an audience for 50 minutes with a mask on your face unless you're doing really outlandish kind of music, and I wasn't. I was doing acoustic folk music and things like that. So I figured that you should also learn that enough of something is enough, and I took the bag off. Up until that time, the limousines were there, the phone calls were there. I was taken here, I was taken to the theater, all kinds of promotional gimmicks and so forth. And as soon as I took the mask off, the phone calls stopped, the limousines stopped, everything stopped, and I was on my own in New York. So that's when I started getting really seriously into acting. I had to find some reason to be there. Yeah. So I worked on game shows as a stand-in and paid my way through acting school for 3 years. And then finally was seen on a Merv Griffin show singing, and was signed to Columbia Pictures.
David Soul and Silver Lady, and before that you heard David talking to Brian Matthew, and that's part of our tribute to David, who died last week at the age of 80.